before the polls had closed in Massachusetts tonight, Democratic officials in that state and around the country had come together to agree on one point. The Martha Coakley Senate campaign was a crappy one. What they disagree on and might all be wrong about is why. When Tuesday was only 29 minutes old, Politico.com posted a story quoting unnamed Hill sources that claimed Rahm Emanuel, White House Chief of Staff, was blaming Coakley, as well as the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, for having botched the race. An unnamed advisor to Coakley pushed back early this afternoon with an email titled, "National Dems failed to aid Coakley until too late," though several of its factual claims have already been called into question. By late afternoon, Coakley pollster Celinda Lake, reportedly another object of Mr. Emanuel's wrath, became one of the few putting their own names on the recriminations, telling Huffington Post that Republican challenger Brown, now the senator-elect who campaigned as a pickup-driving everyman, just happens to be a lawyer, surged because he became the change-oriented candidate. Voters are still voting for the change they voted for in 2008, but they want to see it. And right now they think they've got economic policies from Washington that are delivering more for banks than Main Street. Lake adding, as did at least one unnamed Democrat in D.C., that there's a lot of blame to go around. A Democratic strategist telling Politico the party lost independents in Virginia, New Jersey, and Massachusetts races, and, quote, the only thing those three states have in common is Obama. Let's bring in the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Huffington Post, Arianna Huffington. Good evening, Arianna.
Good evening, Keith. I didn't know that Scott Brown's one daughter is called Ariana. I just found that out.
I guess a mixture of pride and not pride for you on that. We found everything else out about the family there as it began to sort of turn into American Idol meets Who Wants to Be a Senator. Your initial takeaway from tonight's outcome is what?
My initial takeaway is that this could actually be a blessing in disguise for the Democrats. I know the disguise is very heavy, but this is their chance to course correct. Celinda Lake was absolutely right. This is a referendum on the administration's and Congress's policies towards Wall Street. And if they interpret it that way, and if they course correct, they can actually prevent what was coming to them in 2010, which is potentially losing the House and the Senate. There is time to course correct. It has to start with the White House. The president has to actually take a trip to a metaphorical mountaintop and remember why he ran, why he got elected, and why when he now goes and campaigns for Martha Coakley and talks about special interests and fighting the status quo, he's not believed because he is the status quo. He is in charge of all three branches of government.
The Democratic Senator Evan Bayh told ABC News tonight that Democrats need to make common cause with independents and with moderates. Isn't that exactly how the Democrats got into this position in Massachusetts? And does President Obama get that, do you think?
Well, I think the problem with Massachusetts is that Democrats became partners of the special interests and the status quo. The problem is not with independents and moderates. It's with the fact that Billy Towson, the chief lobbyist for pharma, the head of pharma, visited the White House 11 times in the first 6 months. The fact that, as Dick Durbin said, the banks basically are in charge of what's happening on the Hill. This is the fundamental problem. The Democrats, starting with the White House, need to demonstrate to the American people that they are on their side of middle-class families deathly worried about losing jobs, foreclosures, and bankruptcies. And, you know, I love Rachel, but I completely disagree with her. The way to do that is not to fight for a broken health care bill that over 50% of Americans are against, moderates, independents, progressives, and conservatives. The way to do that is to fight for jobs, to fight against the banks that are about this week to give out ridiculous bonuses while middle-class Americans are hurting. This is the priority. There is time to course correct, but they need to course correct in the right direction.
In the next couple of days, we saw it, as we mentioned, past the stroke of midnight last night, the finger pointing, and everybody has 17 fingers, pointing as to whose responsibility this is, kind of lets slip through the cracks things like Senator-elect Brown sort of humiliating his daughters there, which is kind of a trivial point, but more importantly, the senator-elect referred several times to his being something like an independent, and the audience there certainly believed that that's what they were, and they were representing independent values. Statistically, Senator-elect Brown, in his state role in Massachusetts, voted 90% of the time with the Republicans in 2006, but since 2007 he had increased that to 96% of the time. What kind of snake oil salesman gets up there and says, I'm not a Republican and you're not Republicans and we didn't vote Republican?
Well, you know what, Keith, in the end, we can say a lot of things about Scott Brown and a lot of things about Martha Coakley and what a lackluster candidate she was. But in the end, this is not about Massachusetts, and this is not about Scott Brown and Martha Coakley. This is about the National Democratic Party that has lost its way. And this is the time to course correct. And that's why I'm actually, in the end, optimistic that this could turn out to be a good night for Democrats if they learn the right lessons, if they listen to Evan Bayh and to Joe Lieberman, who are telling them to go to some kind of mythical middle, which is exactly where the status quo is, while upping the rhetoric but not changing their actions, then unfortunately the lessons of tonight will have been missed.
Ariana Huffington, who had the name first before the daughter of Senator-elect Brown did, of the Huffington Post. Great, thanks for your time.